Well, it was wonderful yesterday. It just couldn't have been better. We snuck in what I think will be the last ride of the Ninja before we pull some of those fairing parts out. We still have some other details to do on Turbo Steve's bike. We still have some work to do on the side covers, but I like to every morning when I come out here and swap the battery tenders. Just keep these batteries charged. You never know when we're going to sneak in a ride. And I never hold my breath, but I never let one slip by me either. And I'm just making sure, like a farmer, making sure all the chickens are fed in the morning. And every time I'm out here in the morning and I'm reminded of last year restoring this bike, and it took 9 months, basically 800 or 900 hours. We never really kept track of it, but that was a pretty close estimate. And then immediately crashed it on the first day we rode it, and had to repair it. All that stuff is on our channel, along with making some pretty funny decisions on carbon fiber parts and who knows what. The main thing is we try to have a few laughs along the way. So one of the things I want to do in this session, this is going to be a pretty crazy day. I don't know how it's going to play out. We have to do our grocery shopping, which usually kills a whole half a day, but I don't mind doing it, of course. And I wanted to hopefully get this side piece buffed out. I could run out here and see what it's going to look like all put together. Yesterday, a little funny story. I was riding this, and the arrow, you can see the arrow started blowing off. I wonder if I stopped and somebody looked at it and said, "Hey, mister, your trim is coming off the bike." I wonder if they'd even know. And it's a blue skies day, but it is below freezing. This gets me motivated in the morning to have some extra coffee. So what I try to do every morning is evaluate. I got my part up there cooking by the heating vent for a couple extra days. I've got this part ready to sand, and I've got Steve's tank ready to reposition a stripe. So what I try to take into account, and it's very easy for me to do, it's freezing cold out there. It's below freezing. So I don't want to paint. I don't want to sand because I would have to be outside. So I know what I can do with this part. It's pretty much ready to buff. Now I've found over the years, I've tried every kind of possible sandpaper, and we really have settled on, and it was Mark Morgan that brought us some of this Rhino-Wet 2000 grit in Dasa. Now, and made in Portugal. Give the Portuguese a free beer or something. But anyway, we have developed a little system that seems to work pretty well with the material. And I'm interested to see if it's going to work on right now we're going to do a test. And I don't want to be outside for the next couple hours, so this will be a good way to spend the morning. And this afternoon I have to go grocery shopping, but it's to a cool place. It's a really cool place called Uncle Giuseppe's. So what happens anytime we talk about buffing, there's a lot of people, and because we're trying to share information, a lot of people would grab that part, go put it on their motorcycle and be thrilled to death. Well, that's true. There's a lot of people that are hungry, and I'll just give an example. And a hamburger is great, a White Castle hamburger. Then there's people that want a little bit nicer cut of meat, and then there's people that want Kobe steak. Luciano's one of them. We want Kobe steak. I'm not just happy with, oh, it's as good as the factory made it. I want it better. So this is the point of buffing paint out. If you have that need or that desire to have that level of quality, like you go to look at a high-end car, look at any car that's $250,000, and you go, whoa, it's not like my Jetta. That's my Windstar, that's for sure. So, but the way to get it, there's a way that's and it's not easy. It's labor intensive, but it's easy in terms of it's not like doing heart surgery. It requires sandpaper. Now, you could use 2,500, you could use 3,000, but I've settled on 2,000 as the best value for the amount of time I'm going to spend. And then the material, the 4C compound and the buffer, and in the past, I've had this stuff come up very, very quickly. So the answer is, I always like to do a test. This gets time consuming. But I know the people that watch the video really want to know this. I have enough modeling friends to know. If there's one skill in the whole world of modeling, people want to know, it's how to buff paint. So here's the part as the last time we sanded it. Soapy water, a couple of drops of Dawn, and ordinary water. It seems like if the water's warm, it may or may not be of some value. I haven't really found a night and day difference, but the idea is at this point, do as much of it with the block as you can. And whatever you can't do with the block, do by hand. It's just labor, and at this point in time, usually I'm looking in the mirror and looking at YouTube videos anyway, or looking at some MotoGP guy go over the handlebars, or whatever. I don't know. You know, that's just, it's all in the eye of the beholder. Now, a trick is that I've heard. I don't really subscribe to it, but it's a trick I ought to share. And because the people that put this stuff out, I can tell by looking at the quality of the work, they know what they're doing. They have told me you can, on the final buff out, you can do this. Go in one direction and then go exactly 90 degrees. So what you do is you make waffle scratches. And if you can do that, I think this works on the hood of a car, to be honest, not on a part. If you do a part with waffle scratches, it's supposed to buff up a whole lot easier. And maybe they're right. Maybe I'm the one that doesn't know. I don't know. All I know is I enjoy painting. I've enjoyed it my whole life. And it was one of my childhood dreams as a modeler to have shiny, very attractive paintwork on my airplanes. And thank you to Harold Price and John DeTavio and all the people that shared the information when I was young, and Walt Prey, and people that knew way more than I did and were willing to share it. And so I feel compelled. This is the one skill. This is the skill that everybody, it's a relatively easy thing to paint. When it comes to buffing, it's like a black art. Now, whether this is going to come up, remember, this is not 5-star clear. This is the Gavin's clear. And we're going to see how it comes up. Now, I know this is long and boring, but I always do this without a camera cut. Because if you have a camera cut, I don't know what the hell you did in between. Maybe you switch parts. No camera cuts. That's what that should look like. I'll do the rest of it off camera because, to be honest, it gets boring. Now, when it gets into the fillet, I'll have to do it by hand. I always want to be very careful around the edges. I don't want to go through. If I do, I've got to make a touch-up. I always look at the part in the position it would be on the motorcycle, and I say, this I'm going to see the most. In other words, I'm going to see the top edge a lot more than the bottom edge, so I'll spend a little extra time up here. Well, it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway, but once it's perfectly flat, then it'll be ready to buff. Once the part is totally flat like that, and I've got out any of the flaws that I think will be a problem and they'd show in the final product, it's time to get out the 4C compound. And this is the part that I really look forward to. Now, if this buffs up exactly like the 5-star, we're good to go. If it doesn't, then I'll order a gallon of 5-star. But here's the thing. I always like to do the test myself. I don't like to just read something on the internet or whatever. I like to do the test myself. Then once I'm done, and if this paint buffs up beautifully, I have the map, I have the right primer, I have the Bentley black, I have the clear, and I have the gold. I'm ready to paint the motorcycle then. But I want to see this, and if it doesn't, then I make some change and do some more testing. This is why I spent so much time testing the gold out. And I mean, a lot of people think this is overkill, but it really isn't. Because this stuff evolves, and here's just one example. We've been working on logos and endlessly. And I started out with something like that in mind, and it's evolved into something totally different. And maybe it'll change by the time we actually mask the bike off. And this is the compound I found works absolutely beautifully. The Meguiar's works pretty much as well, but this is the product that I get at my body shop supply, and it's worked as good as the 4C, the fiber-filled Bondo has worked. This has worked just as good as compound. Now, another thing with this, I've used this on my car, in fact. Once every year or so, I'll buff out the car, just get the bug scratches out. That stuff really works good. This is a product worth having. And if you use this system that I'm showing, there's no reason it shouldn't work for you either. Now, a couple of things I think are worth mentioning. These buffers and drills and all these pads, everything that comes from Harbor Freight. I call this my Harbor Freight laundry basket. These are not industrial quality. If you had a body shop, you'd go buy the industrial one. But for what we're doing, if you're only buffing out 2 or 3 motorcycles a year or 2 or 3 cars, These are fine, and they do wear out. They wear the brushes out in probably X amount of hours, but they typically weigh under $20, and then you get 20% off. Now, one of the tips, to me, it's worth its weight in gold anyway. These things are so cheap. They're two, I think, for $3.99. There's usually two. Sometime I've opened the pack and had three. But I guess they can't count in China or Pakistan or something. Anyway, it's always worth it when you're doing a real high quality job, and I want this to be a high quality job, of course. Again, I'm not looking to replicate. If I was a purist and I wanted it to fit, and I know people that do like the look of a stock paint job, and they don't want it to be really high gloss. I do. Shame on me. Now, when things are cheap, you don't have to use the same pad over and over and over. You can be a big spender and get a new pad. And that's step one to having a really nice job. Now, interesting stuff, and I mentioned this a couple days ago. Don't leave these products out in a freezing garage. It's been below freezing every night, basically, for the last maybe week or so. They tend to settle, so it's a good idea to always shake them up, and just common sense stuff. Now, I've seen, and I want to pass the information on because I really don't know if there's a benefit or no benefit, but I know pretty much what works for me is I see people that do this with their foam pads, and they have different things that work for them, and well, again, I'm not sure, but I know one thing for sure. I wanted to show that as a demo. I know one thing for sure is the edge does most of the cutting. So right at the edge, and this is my little tip, is I want to get some of that material right on the edge. Again, this is a brand new pad, and the purpose of all this is we're not trying to make something that's all super entertaining and oh boy, you know, all kind of camera cuts and everything. You can, the people that tend to want to watch these videos, at least my channel, they're serious people that want to learn how to do things. And it's taken me a long time to learn how to do them, so I'm happy to pass it on. Okay, now I like to do, and again, this is my thing, I like to take the polish. By the way, this handle has worked out great. And just smear the whole part. I want to do this without a camera cut. Show one piece. And then from there, always with the machine first, and then hand buff second. You can't go wrong. It's absolutely the easiest way to do it that I know of. Okay, so I've gotten to this point. We know this is not buffed. Now we know, as an example, I know this is not 5-star. So it may be a little easier, maybe a little worse. I don't know until I do a piece in real time. I'll pick a spot, no spot in particular. I know this gets boring watching this, and I don't want to fast forward it. Of course, with these small handheld buffers, you can even do this while the bike is in one piece. But you always want to avoid cutting through on a corner or an edge. Now, I got just an ordinary microfiber from Harbor Freight. Let's see what we got. Now the part that I've buffed, that really is buffed, doesn't look a whole lot different at this point than it does when you use the 5-star. It doesn't look a whole lot different. I'll know when I finish the whole part. But I'll do as much as I can. I wanted to do this without a camera cut. And I'll do all the corners and edges by hand with a microfiber. Now there's always some spots, and this is one of them right in here, that's really not possible to get a machine in there. But And because of all the years of buffing out model airplanes, we had to do the whole airplane by hand, basically because they were so delicate. I don't mind, and I have done the wheels for the FZR restoration. Did the whole wheels buffed by hand, no machines, and it worked out fine. And by the way, you can, if you don't want to buy one of those cheesy buffers, you can just do the whole thing by hand, watch a football game, put a towel in your lap, and go root for your favorite team or whatever. And it will buff out by hand. Now, this part, I think you can just basically see. We're not there. We're not done yet, but I thought this is how it was going to play out. The Gavco Clear and the 5-star, very similar. They buff out the same. And this really finishes off us having our map for the paintwork on this motorcycle restoration. Now, this is an 11-year-old motorcycle, and it might look even good in video, but there's a lot of chips, a lot of stone chips. The fairing has a lot of little damage to it from wear and tear. I mean, the bike has, I think, 26,000. I'm not sure. It's irrelevant. It's hard use. It's not. We don't sit and drive to the local coffee shop and just sit there. We go for a ride. The whole purpose of having these bikes is so you can get some exercise. Anyway, I just wanted to, by the time I finish this part and show it when it's all buffed out, this is now the first official part of the restoration. It's going to go over on the finishing bench. And we are one step, and then I have to just figure out how cold it's going to be and what I'm going to do out there. Karen came down before and she said it hasn't warmed up at all, so maybe we're just going to, when it's a lot below freezing, I just don't enjoy being out there. And if I don't enjoy this, what's the purpose of doing it? It's the whole thing in a nutshell. Anyway, let's see how this looks. Get a clean one. Yeah, it buffed up by hand, not a whole lot different. It's fine. Anyway, now the final thing on this part, I got to knock the wood off, and I can just pour some alcohol down there, and that'll melt that. Get rid of that. I've got to drill a hole. This hole, I've got to just run a Dremel tool through it. Anytime you do carbon fiber like this, and the nice part about this is all solid carbon fiber. There's no way a bug's gonna hit that and it's gonna break. Anytime you have to drill a hole where you've made a repair, or like this, you never want to run a drill through it. The drill catches on the carbon and can crack it. You burn through with a Dremel tool bit. That's, as Vlad and I have done so many of his, that we've reinforced those things. Now, what's lucky about this restoration, there isn't any of that kind of work like we had with the FZR, with his pieces missing and cracks and Bondo and everything. This body work, when this job is done, it should be flawless. The next step, I wanted to put a coat of flitz on this. The reason for the flitz is just for protection. And it's like, well, carnauba wax would be the same thing. I can gently polish it in, wipe it off. I'm not trying to buff it out anymore. It's got a beautiful shine. This is just about, well, it's the first part of this restoration that I think it's going to set the tone for where we go with this. This gloss black, it has a look that you're not going to see on a stock motorcycle anywhere. This level of finish will stand out in a crowd. And with those gold arrows on it and the gold wheels, I just think it's going to be a cool motorcycle. So anyway, with the flitz, it's not a big deal. And then all you need to do is let it cook for a couple of seconds. And what this does, it puts a level of protection on everything. Yeah, I'm real happy the way that buffed out. That's about as good as it gets. Now, the way this part attaches to the motorcycle, there's a Zeus fitting goes through there, but I carbon reinforced it when I carbon fibered the piece. So now I have to take a Dremel tool and just open that hole back up accurately. But in this case, anything like this, never just try to run a drill through there. And once I break off that piece of wood, I don't need the handle anymore. This part is buffed out and ready to move on to the next part of it. And I would rate this as being well, pretty successful, because it checked all the boxes. I wanted that shape, I wanted it to be strong, I wanted it to be carbon fiber, and I wanted it to have a finish unlike you would find in a motorcycle dealer. And I think, in a roundabout way, we've pretty much got what we want. And that part is, shall we say, in the bank. Well, it's been a long time coming to get this part to this part. And the reason I started this as the first part of the project is I wanted this part, when I put it back on a motorcycle, is going to change the whole look of the motorcycle. It, in a very subtle way. Now, and all the things we're doing on this restoration are very subtle. But there's one thing that's not subtle. Anybody that can look at that black, at the finish, the quality of the finish is just awesome. And that's going to be the defining part of the motorcycle, that black paint. Anyway, we're working on other things. We got Turbo Steve's parts here, and this part I have to turn this part into this part in the next week or so. Other projects, but this day ended short because we have to go to Uncle Giuseppe's, and that is the high. I know what Luciano knows what that is, and we are coming home with some good food. So I know you don't want to go to Uncle Giuseppe's, so hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.